I'm Chris Stone. I'm the head coach of the Strongmen. And today we're going to become the Cactus. We're going to learn how to turn our adversity into growth. Just a quick snapshot for those of you who haven't met me before. I know a number of you already. But I'm Chris Stone. I'm 31, as I say, the head coach of the Strongmen. I like football, metalcore, and motorcycles. If I'm a very sort of stereotypical man, I suppose. I dislike lemon, slow walkers, especially during the fringe around Edinburgh, and TikTok dances. And my favourite exercise has to be the deadlift. My least favourite has got to be treadmill running. And yes, there are people who are fitness enthusiasts who really dislike running. I'm definitely one of them. Just a little bit about my own journey. So I've been a coach for about a decade now. I've worked with more than 300 individuals on a one-to-one and group basis, coached football teams and worked in the US and Canada. I've delivered work for organisations and charities like the Scottish Football Association, BBC, Times Radio, Health in Mind, Bernardo's and Young Scot. It doesn't come as a surprise to me that I've built a career in health, fitness and well-being. But what does come as a huge surprise is how much my focus has shifted more to the mental side of things. Back when I was in uni studying sport and exercise science, I hated all of the psychology modules that we had to do. I was so disengaged to the point that I felt the only thing I got out of it was learning how to spell the word psychology. But fast forward to today, and it's now the heart of what I do. Why? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Firstly, as I say, I started off as a personal trainer, and I believed that coming into that role, all I needed to do was provide knowledge and information. If I provide knowledge and information, that alone will be enough for my clients to adapt and change and become healthier and fitter. But I very quickly learned that was not the case. And actually, I've learned over the decade of coaching that there's a lot in the fitness industry that is not just unhelpful, but actually dysfunctional, causes more harm than good. And for that reason, I understood that we need to go a lot deeper. I need to go a lot deeper with clients. I need to establish a proper relationship that's based on trust in order to get to that point of getting a little deeper and understanding the underlying causes behind a lot of the unhealthy and challenging behaviors of them. And the second reason is also because I struggled for a lot of my life with my mental health, in particular, depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. Thankfully, though, after many years, I made a full recovery. But that experience and the journey from that recovery journey did teach me a lot. It also spurred me on to help others who may find themselves in a similar situation to the one that I was in. And that's exactly why I do what I do currently, and in supporting people to improve their physical and mental well-being, particularly with men. I trust this presentation is going to provide you with some insight and some key takeaways as well. That's going to help you make some positive change and improve your own well-being. Okay, so before I get into Become the Cactus, I just wanted to start by thinking about the term strength and resilience, because we hear a lot about resilience these days, a lot about how important it is that we're resilient, both personally and professionally. So I wanted to share how I conceptualize the terms first and foremost, because it's in cultivating these two that we're going to be able to continue to grow during hard times. When we do consider strength and resilience, often we attribute strength as being a purely physical attribute and resilience as being a mental attribute. So strength is about being able to lift weight or objects, heavy bags, carrying grocery bags home from the shops, moving furniture around the house, opening stuck jars, things like that. Whereas the resilience side is more about like coping during hard times, whether it's bereavement, relationship breakdown, financial challenges, and just adverse life events. However, one of my foundational principles as a coach is that the mind and body are connected. They are deeply integrated and cannot be separated. Therefore, with that in mind, these terms are not one or the other, they are both. It is possible to have physical strength and resilience as well as mental strength and resilience. And I'll come back to that in a minute with a few examples. But I just wanted to surmise it all with these two words. So for me, strength is about overcoming. And as you can see with the picture on the left-hand side there, it's depicted as pushing the boulder up the hill. It's dynamic. We're facing the challenge and we're moving forward with it. Whereas resilience is, the word is withstand. So we are, and that's depicted by the weather tree that has been battered by the elements, but it's been able to bend without breaking. It's more passive and it's about facing the challenge but standing firm rather than trying to move forward with it. So physical strength and physical resilience, what then are the differences between the two? As I've touched on with those previous examples, physical strength is about overcoming those physical challenges. It's lifting those heavy objects, moving things around. It might even be going to the gym and lifting heavy weights. Physical resilience, on the other hand, is your body's ability to resist and withstand stress. So every day, your body is exposed to a number of stressors, whether it's temperature, weather, daily just strain from movement, repetitive movements, and doing chores and tasks. And your body needs to be able to withstand those things. Exercise is another element on top of that. If we're exercising, we're adding additional stress to the body. And again, that's where physical resilience is so important. If we have a low physical resilience, your body's not going to be able to withstand the stress, and therefore we might end up getting injured, ill, or we may burn out. If, however, we have a high level of physical resilience, it means our body's much more endurant and much more able to withstand these daily stressors without the risk of getting injured, ill, or burning out. Mental strength and resilience now. So if physical strength is about overcoming physical challenges, mental strength is about overcoming mental challenges. So it might look like facing your fears, stepping out of your comfort zone and trying something new, asking for help, using your problem solving skills, and generally learning and growing. And if physical resilience is about withstanding physical challenges, then mental resilience is about withstanding mental challenges. So it's enduring these difficult events, the relationship breakdowns, illnesses, accidents, unexpected life events that happen. And it's about trying to find the optimism and opportunity in those challenging times that preserves our well-being and keeps us upright. I want to highlight at this stage that it is very possible to be physically strong and resilient, but mentally quite weak and fragile, and vice versa. I'll give you two very quick examples. These are not based on anybody, just so you're aware. These are just examples. So on one hand, we have Archie. He's in the gym every day. He's well built. He flexes in every mirror that he passes. And he's very able to withstand and overcome a lot of physical stressors through heavy lifting in the gym. But mentally, it's a different story. It doesn't take much to set Archie off. He finds it very hard to cope with life in general. He's very reactive, easily angered and aggressive, and he shuts down whenever there's any type of vulnerable conversations. Then on the other hand, we have Ben. So he's the kind of person that you go to for advice. I'm sure we all can think of someone who in our lives who are like that. The kind of person who seems to take everything in their stride. They're the calmest person in the room. They don't appear to be stressed or overwhelmed. Mentally, they appear very strong and resilient and able to withstand and overcome mental stressors very well. Physically, though, again, it's a different story for Ben. It doesn't take a lot for him to feel very fatigued and tired in terms of physical exertion. He finds it hard to keep up with physical activity and generally tends to avoid strenuous exercise and finds it very hard to motivate himself to do so. That then brings us on to the cactus. Now, at this stage, you're probably thinking, what on earth has this got to do with anything? Well, I'm only going to add to your confusion with some random cactus facts. You're very welcome. Firstly, the biggest cactus ever to be recorded grew to be 23.8 meters in height. That is the same size as 5.5 double-decker buses stacked on top of each other. So next time you see a double-decker bus, just imagine 5.5 on top of it, and that's roughly the size that we're talking. The oldest cactus lived to be 300 years old. It was a giant at over 12 meters tall and had 52 arms. Cactus spines are not thorns. They're actually highly modified leaves that help to collect tiny hints of water from the wind in order to survive. Some cacti can survive as long as 2 years without water because they have these thick, fleshy stems that store water to keep them going in the harsh environments. And lastly, some cactus or cacti, they have edible fruits and colourful flowers as well. So there you go, some interesting cactus facts for you. I'll explain a little bit about where my passion for the cactus comes from. So this is me probably around the age of 15 or 16. I'm looking super cool with the shades. Originally, I grew up in the Highlands of Scotland, and I spent a lot of time holidaying over in the Western Isles. Very exotic. Practically every holiday, we would pack up and head over to the West Coast. And on these holidays, we'd often stay with my uncle and auntie. And in their home, quite ironically, seeing as it's the Western Isles, they had this sort of sunroom, which contained a variety of different plants. Now, as a kid, I wasn't really interested in boring old plants, but there was the one plant that always caught my attention, which was the cactus. The reason it stood out so much was it continued to grow despite being pretty much neglected. It very rarely got watered, and it spent so much of its time in this really warm room and getting hit by direct sunlight. Every holiday I'd arrive, it wouldn't take me long to venture into the sunroom just to see how much more this cactus had grown. And over the years, I watched it go from this tiny stub to this towering giant, to the point that if you were to walk into the sunroom, it would immediately grab your attention as it dwarfs all the other plants in that room. And it was striking to me, like, how could a plant grow this big and be so healthy without really getting much care or attention, especially when all the other plants around it in the room were shriveling and dying, despite my auntie's best attempts to revive them. So to me, the cactus is a symbol of strength, resilience, and adaptability. It's something that we can all learn from, and that's exactly what we're going to do in this section as we become the cactus. Here we are out in the desert. This is not the Western Isles. But we'll start by drawing our attention to the different types of weather that we get out here. In particular, I want to draw your attention to the 4 different elements we have: the sun, rain, sandstorm, and wind. Each element represents the uncontrollables. So these are the things that happen in life or happen to us that we have no control over. So to begin with, we've got the sun, which we'll call the stressors. These are the daily challenges and stresses that we face. So some examples might be life concerns, difficult emotions arising from challenging situations, environmental stressors that I've touched on already, like temperature, daily strain. It might be relationship challenges, someone treating you differently, or feeling a bit of tension or uneasiness around other people. Then we've got the rain. This is what we'll call the regulators, the opposite of stressors. These are the uncontrollables that feed and nourish us in the same way the rain will nourish the cactus. So it's the feeling of security and the positive emotions that come from the good things in life. Environmental regulators, so enjoying the good weather and the brighter days, the benefits you get from relationships, so someone treating you kindly or feeling relaxed and enjoying others' company. We've got the sandstorm, which we'll call turbulence. So these are the unexpected challenges that crop up suddenly, such as a sudden loss, whether it's something like misplacing a valuable item or something maybe more significant like the end of a relationship or the passing of a loved one. It could also involve things like getting sick or injured, facing breakdowns or malfunctions with your tech or your car, dealing with transport problems and financial issues. These might be unexpected, turbulent problems. Then we've got windfall, which is the opposite again of the turbulence. So these are the unexpected positive things in life. So it could be a chance meeting with a friend, making new connections, maybe at a networking event like this, receiving compliments or getting some good news or a stroke of luck. These sometimes it's the case that we experience more of one element than the other. I'm sure we can all reflect on phases in our life where we seem to have gone through periods of sun and sandstorm, and it's just never ending. But on the other side, we've also gone through periods where we're getting that rain and the windfall quite a lot. It's just a reminder. There's a couple of things just to take away from that. Firstly, these elements will come and go. So even if you're going through a tough time, it's likely it will eventually pass. And if things are easier, things are going quite well, it's important to take some time to appreciate that and make the most of the moments, make most of that moment whilst we're in it. The second thing is to remember that these elements are uncontrollable. We have to just accept them. We can't actually influence the weather, so therefore we can't actually influence a lot of these uncontrollable things. We just ultimately need to work on accepting them. Let's move on then to consider the components of the cactus. So Starting off with the roots and soil. Many cacti, I always get it mixed up, have long fibrous roots which help to absorb moisture from the soil. I want you to look at these roots as our foundational values and the soil as the environments that we put ourselves in. So values are our core truths about us that help to guide our beliefs and our actions, while environments are the surroundings and places that we spend most of our time. If we know our values and place ourselves in good soil, we have everything we need to grow and develop. The storage components, so the thick fleshy stems of the cactus, as I've referred to, they help store water to help to ensure their survival during tough times. So I want you to think about the storage as our ability to look after ourselves, to absorb life experiences, gather information, and build up resources in reserve. If we're ensuring to learn, to be adaptable, and prioritize our own self-care, then that is going to be enough to protect our well-being when times get tough. Moving on then to the spines and the skin. The cactus has these spiky spines and tough skin to protect itself from the potential harm from animals and the elements. I want you to see these spines and skin as protective boundaries that we put in place to help protect us from harm, either intentional or unintentional. Boundaries are like personal guidelines that help to protect us, setting limits on what is acceptable and not acceptable in our lives and in our relationships. If we don't have these boundaries in place, we're much more susceptible to harm, which may come from a variety of different sources. It may be the elements, or it may be harm from others or ourselves as well. Finally, we have fruits, flowers, and shelter. As mentioned, some species of cactus grow these fruits and colourful flowers, which play an important role in their habitat. It provides food and nutrients for animals, and healthy cactuses also provide shelter and safety for other animals, as well as safety for themselves. The fruits and flowers I want you to see as these positive and strong qualities, things like kindness, empathy, determination, honesty, these qualities that we develop that come as a result of all of the other steps that we've put in place so far. It's the values and environments, the protective boundaries and self-care that then lead to the development of these fruits and flowers. And the other thing to consider with this is, with these positive qualities naturally on display, others will see us as safe people, someone who they can trust and rely on. So by growing healthy and strong in this way, not only are we able to support ourselves well, we can also support others too. Right, I realize there was a lot to take in there. So let's recap everything and summarize it in 4 simple steps to help you build cactus-like strength and resilience. Consider values and environments. That's step 1. Before we do anything, we need to understand what our foundational values as a human being are. If we don't know or understand our values, then we may feel lost or unsure about our direction in life. We don't have a strong foundation, and that's going to make it impossible to grow. Understanding your values is about exploring what matters to you, what makes you feel happy and fulfilled. And to do that, you may need to take time to reflect on your beliefs, your priorities, and your experiences in life, the things that are meaningful to you. And I would encourage you to write things down. It does make it a lot easier to help you determine these things. I'll give you an example. So I've gone through this process, and I've uncovered that for me, my 3 main values in life are authenticity, adaptability, and awareness. So authenticity means I stay true to myself and I'm being open and honest at all times. Adaptability is about staying creative and flexible in challenging situations. And awareness is about putting myself in other people's shoes and always looking to show compassion and understanding where possible. In addition to values, as I say, with environments, it's important we surround ourselves with, or we put ourselves in these positive environments. These environments are the soil that is going to nourish us. And if we're placing ourselves in negative or toxic environments, we can't expect to grow in a positive and healthy way. When you're thinking about environments, you might want to consider areas such as your social circles, social media, your physical surroundings like your home or your neighborhood, and the ways in which you might be able to change things if needed. So, for example, it might be an idea to choose to spend more time with the people who really look out for you. You might want to unfollow those social media accounts that don't make you feel good, or seek out new activities or groups that align better with health and well-being. Step 2 then, be proactive about self-care. So this is the storage element. Having considered your values and environments, if we want to grow and maintain good well-being, then we need to prioritize our well-being. It needs to become the number one priority. And if we don't do this, then we're not going to be able to cope with those elements that we touched on earlier. And we're going to be susceptible to harm. We want to take this proactive approach. This means making intentional effort to do those things that makes us feel happy, fulfilled, and supported. Now, when many people hear the term self-care, they often think about things like bubble baths and candles, yoga, or meditations, or open water swimming and ice plunges. But self-care isn't necessarily a restricted list of activities that you must do. By definition, it's really any activity that adds to your health and well-being. And what that activity is for you might be something totally different for another. So, for example, I love riding my motorbike, but I know I know fine well that if I were to stick my wife on the back, she would want to divorce me by the time we got home. So that's not her thing. Instead, for her, she likes singing and dancing, which similarly is not for me. So I would encourage you to figure out what makes you feel good. And once you've figured that out, look to do these things as often as you possibly can, even daily if possible. And doing so, what we'll do is we'll build up the resources that we need, not just to survive, but to thrive, especially during those challenging times. Then step 3, put boundaries in place. So this is the skin and the spines. For our well-being to thrive, we need to protect it. That's why boundaries are so important. Just as the cactus uses the prickly spines and tough skin to protect itself, we need to do likewise. They're essential for maintaining healthy relationships and protecting ourselves from negative influences. As mentioned, boundaries are these sort of personal guidelines that draw a line and make it clear what is acceptable and comfortable for you and what is not. By establishing and communicating these boundaries, not only do you take steps to prevent harm, you also deter others from attempting to cross those limits. Personally, I've gone from someone who had absolutely zero boundaries to someone who's now very clear and firm on boundaries. Here are a few things that I wanted to share when it comes to setting my own boundaries that I hope will be helpful. Firstly, the boundaries you set are yours. Nobody's entitled to decide them for you or change them. If others have an issue with your boundaries, you don't need to change for their sake. Secondly, I don't impose boundaries on other people. And what I mean by that is the boundaries I have always will relate to me and the action I will take to protect myself. So, for example, I won't set a boundary like, you will not talk to me in a disrespectful way, because ultimately I don't have control over the other person and their actions, but I do have control over myself and my actions. So instead, it'll be something more like, I won't put up with being talked to disrespectfully, and I'll end the conversation if that happens. Also, if you've communicated a boundary like this to someone, it is up to them to respect it or not. Once again, you can't force someone to adhere to your boundaries. But as I say, you can take action to protect yourself. So using that previous example, it was, I'm going to end the conversation if you speak to me in that way. I hope that you can see the difference there. And finally, once you've created boundaries, once I've created boundaries, I don't necessarily always feel the need to communicate them with everyone, to anyone and everyone. I simply have them in my mind to help me guide myself through life. I don't necessarily always need to explicitly state them, although there may well be instances where others do cross a boundary line, and therefore it might become necessary for you to be clear on your boundaries. And then the last one is offer support. So that's the fruits, flowers, and shelter. With those strong roots, the good soil, the water storage, the spines in the skin, all of that in place, we're going to grow and develop to get to the point where we can support ourselves well and also feel able to offer support to others too. People, as I touched on, will see those fruits and flowers, those positive characteristics, and will be seen as that trusted person who can be at that place of safety, security, and a really good friend. How can we go about doing that? Well, we can offer a hand to our friends and family when they need the help, provide the kindness and encouragement to others, and probably best and easiest of all is just listen to others, because a lot of us naturally, and it all does come from a good place, we want to fix other people's problems. It's really hard to see someone that you love and care about struggle. So it's understandable that you want to jump in and fix it with solutions. But the truth is, more often than not, that's actually unhelpful, because solutions aren't what's needed. Instead, what's needed is that listening ear, just that opportunity, that space for the person you're helping to share and get things off their chest. Just one thing to mention on the point of offering support as well before I move on, and that's to always return to point 2 and 3, the self-care and the boundaries. Whilst it's great to offer help and support to others, it should not come at the expense of your own well-being. That means that sometimes you might not be in a position to offer support right now, and we may need to prioritize ourselves instead, and that is absolutely okay. Because if we don't do that, we risk taking on far too much. We're very quickly going to run out of the resources that we've built up, and our well-being is going to suffer as a result. We're not going to be able to support ourselves, never mind anybody else. So that's the 4 steps. That then brings me on to stress. At this point, I want to rewind to the start of the meeting where we all identified a hard experience in life that led to growth. The reason I had you consider this question was for the topic of stress, because the way that most of us view stress is not helpful, because it actually prevents us from growing. Ultimately, stress is something that we all experience, and an unavoidable
Sorry, just a couple of minutes left.
That's fine. Yeah,
you.
I'll just wrap up here. The way that most of us view stress is not just unhelpful, but prevents us from growing. Ultimately, stress is something that we all experience. It's unavoidable, and we tend to view it as something really negative. 4 points I want to quickly share with you to help you reframe stress and use it to your advantage. So number 1, stress is not bad. We often view it as something negative, and it does have the potential to be negative. If stress is not kept in check, then it can cause havoc with your well-being. You're more likely to get ill, struggle with things like anxiety, depression, cardiovascular issues, sleep disruption, and a range of other health challenges. But strength in and of itself is not bad. In fact, stress is essential in growth. Like the cactus, we need it if we're going to continue to grow in spite of the harsh and difficult environment. Take a moment and think about your strongest characteristics. How many of them develop from the easy times? Very few, probably. Most of your strongest characteristics probably come from stressful times. That said, we want to balance stress. Too much or too little stress can cause problems. For the cactus, if it gets too much, it's going to wilt, shrink, and die. If it gets too little, it'll become weak and fragile and prone to issues. So it's crucial that we strike a good balance when it comes to stress. And we can do this by checking in on ourselves regularly and paying attention to what our bodies are trying to tell us. And then lastly, this is the key concept that is going to help you balance stress in a way and encourage you to grow during difficult times. It's something known as progressive overload. Now, this is actually a physical training principle that I use with clients in the gym, and it simply involves gradually adding stress over time. And doing that causes the body to adapt and change. If I have a new member or client in the gym, and an example here, the first time they come in, if they squat 40 kilos, to apply progressive overload, I very simply would add a little bit more for the week following. So it might be 45, 50, 55, 60, and so on. This principle ensures that the body is receiving the right amount of stress to continue to improve. If I were to jump the weight up far too soon, so instead of going from 40 to 45, go up to 60 or 70, what's going to happen? They're likely to get injured because the stress is too much too soon. If I were to stick at 40 kilos forever, what's going to happen? They're not going to improve because the amount of stress isn't enough and it's not increasing. So whilst this is a physical training principle, this is something that I would encourage you to think about in life more generally. Where can we take these small, gradual, incremental steps to increase stress and ensure that you're growing at a steady rate without the risk of either over or underdoing it? Okay, great. I'm going to stop the share there, but thank you very much for listening. I hope and trust that was beneficial.